In this video I'm going to show you exactly why you might be better off purchasing the BMW 1M instead of the brand new BMW M135i. And I'm going to do this by comparing the average prices, the depreciation per year and the depreciation per 1000 kilometers driven. And we start right now. No, stop it. Now if you clicked on this video you're probably already aware, but for the sake of completeness let's repeat it one more time. The brand new BMW 1 Series is no longer rear wheel driven, but it's front wheel driven. Now that is of course with exception of the 135i where traction goes to all of the wheels. And to make matters even worse, they also removed the 6-cylinder engines from the lineup. And as a previous 1 Series owner, that makes me sad. Those two things were namely exactly what I liked about the 1 Series and what in my opinion were the unique selling points. Moreover, these two changes put the car in the exact same category as the Mercedes Benz A35 AMG and the Audi S3. And let's be honest here, they are all more or less the same cars which make the same annoying artificially inflated farting sound. So that got me thinking, what alternatives are still out there? Exactly, the BMW 1M. Now one thing is certain, the 1M has a higher coolness factor than the new 135i. And on top of that, it's also financially a lot smarter to go for a 1M, and that's what I'm going to show you now. And I will do this by showing you the three most important aspects: the average prices, the depreciation per year and the depreciation per 1000 miles driven. But before we dive into the numbers, make sure to smash that like button if you enjoyed the video and to comment with a car for which you would like to see a depreciation analysis. Remember then also to subscribe and to click the notification bell so you get notified when your requested analysis goes live. Let's continue now by having a look to the 1M market, and we start with the two histograms over here. At the top we have the price distribution with price on the horizontal axis and the number of cars available for that given price point on the vertical axis. And at the bottom in orange we have the kilometer distribution with kilometers on the horizontal axis and the number of cars available for that given kilometer amount on the vertical axis. If we start then at the top with the price distribution, we can see that there are 38 cars for sale and that prices start at around 35,000 euros. They stretch then up all the way till 90,000 euros. The average price point is indicated by the dashed line going through the graph, and this is 52,000 euros. All of these numbers are by the way based on the German market for the simple reason that there were the most 1Ms for sale over there. So how do these prices compare to the 135i? And there is only one way to find out. I had to go into the configurator. Now I didn't go too crazy on the specification. I changed the paint color, opted for some sportier wheels and included some business packages. And surprise surprise, I ended up at a price point which is exactly the same as the average price of a used 1M. Now the catch here of course is that the 1M is a second-hand car, and this we can see in the histogram at the bottom. You can see namely that the average 1M for sale has 55,000 kilometers driven. Now there are actually quite many cars which have less than 10,000 kilometers driven, and there's also even one car which has 160,000 kilometers driven. Let's start now with the second part, the depreciation per year, and that is shown in the graph over here. Now you can see that we have model year on the horizontal axis and price on the vertical axis. Now each of the blue bubbles represents a 1M for sale in today's market, and the blue solid line going through the graph shows the depreciation curve. And then you also see some black axes in the graph, and these show the average price point for a given model year. Now we can see immediately that the depreciation curve is almost completely flat, and a more detailed analysis showed that the average depreciation per year is 2,900 euros. Now that value is actually extremely close to the one of the BMW M3 E92, and you can check out the full depreciation analysis for that car by clicking on the link appearing above here. However, you can also see that there are some outliers in the graph. Over here, and over here. I therefore also did a quick check to see what would happen if I would remove them from the analysis. And that actually flattened the depreciation curve even more, yielding a depreciation number which was very close to zero. So how does this depreciation curve compare then to the one for a 135i? Now we of course have no historical data for the 135i because it's brand new. But I've analyzed now so many cars for the channel that I've used those as a benchmark for the 135i. And based on that analysis, I think it's fair to say that the new 135i will depreciate at least 20% in its first year. If we take then 20% of the new price for the car which I spec'd on the configurator, we can see that the depreciation in the first year will be 10,400 euros. And that is more than 3 times as much as the current depreciation for a 1M. Let's have a look then to the third important aspect, which is the depreciation per 1000 kilometers driven, and that is shown in the graph over here. You can see that we have the kilometers on the horizontal axis and the price on the vertical axis. Also, you can see that the blue solid line shows again the depreciation per 1000 kilometers driven. And if we inspect this line a little bit closer, we can see that the depreciation is the highest for the cars which have, relatively speaking, few kilometers driven. Now for cars with higher mileage, the depreciation curve is of course flattening out. Overall then, we can say that the average depreciation per 1000 kilometers driven is 220 euros. And that number is actually a lot higher than I expected it to be. It is namely a little bit higher than the depreciation per 1000 kilometers driven for the Porsche Cayman 981 GTS. And it is a lot higher than the depreciation for an A35 AMG. This plot therefore shows that, relatively speaking, the 1M is quite sensitive to mileage. And that becomes also extremely clear when we investigate the correlation plot, which is popping now on the screen. Now you don't need to be familiar with the term correlation, but in short it means the extent to which the two variables linearly move in the same direction. And the correlation sits between -1 and +1, where +1 means that they move both in the positive direction and -1 means that they move both in the negative direction. In the middle then, so at 0, means that there is no correlation. Now for most of the cars, the correlation between year and price and kilometer and price sits between 0.7 and 0.9. Hence, the older the car and the higher the mileage, the lower the price. You can see, however, in this plot, by looking to the correlation between year and price, that it doesn't work like that for the 1M. The correlation is namely only 0.14, meaning almost no correlation. On the contrary, the correlation between kilometer and price sits in a normal range and is 0.7. Now to put this a little bit more practical, it means that kilometer is a way more important indicator for the value of a 1M than the model year. So how does this then again relate to the 135i? Now also here again, we have of course no historical data, so I had to look to my previous depreciation analysis to figure out what would be a reasonable number for the 135i. And based on that analysis, I think that the depreciation per 1000 kilometers driven will be between 140 and 170 euros for the 135i. Hence, there will be a difference of 50 to 80 euros when you compare the 1M to the 135i. Alright, so let's wrap this up and conclude. Why does it make more sense to buy a 1M than the 135i? Point number 1, the 1M is simply cooler. And there is no discussion about it. Point number 2, the purchasing prices are actually the same if you spec the 135i a little bit sensible. Point number 3 then, the depreciation per year will be 3 times as high for the 135i in its first year when you compare it to the 1M. And in monetary value, this means that you will be saving about 7,000 euros. And then finally, point number 4, the 1M is depreciating this point I need to give to the 135i. We namely saw that it is quite likely that the 135i will depreciate less per 1000 kilometers driven than the 1M. However, the advantage in terms of depreciation per 1000 kilometers driven is only 50 to 80 euros. But that advantage pales in comparison to the disadvantage you have in depreciation per year. So I think we have a clear winner over here. It's the 1M. And who would have thought that at the beginning of the video? Now if after seeing this video you're still not convinced that the 1M is an awesome car and that it is the right car for you, then you might want to check out a Corvette C7 or a Nissan GT-R. And for those you can find full depreciation analysis over here and over here. Remember then also to subscribe and to give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. As always, thank you for watching and see you next time.